The wind was already cold when I heard the crying. I live alone at the edge of Miller's Ridge, the last human farm before the wild forest starts. Most people in town think I'm strange for staying out here by myself, but I like the quiet. I like fixing old machines, growing my own food, and not having anyone tell me what to do. That night, I was locking up my tool shed when I heard a sound that didn't belong there. It wasn't an animal. It was something closer to a child sobbing, muffled and afraid. I grabbed my flashlight and walked toward the sound, my boots crunching over frozen grass. Behind my old barn, half hidden in the bushes, I found something that made my heart stop. A small pod, scorched black on one side, was resting in the dirt. Steam rose from a crack in its side, and huddled next to it were three small figures, shivering, with big dark eyes that caught the light of my flashlight like a cat's. They were children, not human children, that was clear right away. Their skin had a faint blue-gray color, almost like moonlight on water. Their ears were slightly pointed, and thin silver markings ran down their cheeks like tears frozen in place. But despite how different they looked, one thing was completely familiar to me: fear. Simple fear. I lowered my flashlight so it wouldn't shine directly in their eyes. "Hey," I said softly. "It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you." They didn't understand my words, of course, but they understood my tone. The smallest one, who couldn't have been older than 5 in human years, took a shaky step toward me. The other two pulled her back, whispering something in a language that sounded like wind chimes and static mixed together. I crouched down slowly, trying to look as harmless as possible. My stomach growled loudly at that exact moment, which almost made me laugh. I placed a hand on my belly and made an exaggerated face, like I was starving. Then I pointed at them. The oldest one, a boy who looked maybe 10, tilted his head. I mimed eating with my hands, then pointed toward my house, where warm light was glowing from the kitchen window. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then the smallest girl took another step forward, and this time, nobody stopped her. I didn't call anyone that night. I know I probably should have. There are protocols for finding unknown life forms, reporting stations, government contacts, all sorts of official steps. But looking at those 3 trembling children, all I could think about was that they needed food and warmth, not paperwork. I brought them inside, wrapped them in blankets, and set a pot of vegetable stew on the stove. They stared at my kitchen like it was something out of a dream, touching the wooden table, the metal spoons, even the flickering candle I lit when the power flickered. When the stew was ready, I placed 3 bowls in front of them. The oldest boy watched me eat a spoonful first, like he wanted to make sure it wasn't dangerous. Only after I smiled and nodded did they finally eat. I have never seen anyone eat like that. Not greedy, not messy, just desperate, like they hadn't eaten in days. The littlest one made a small, happy sound with each bite, and something in my chest tightened. Whoever they were, wherever they came from, someone had let them go hungry for far too long. That night, I gave them my bed and slept on the couch. I told myself it was temporary, just until I figured out what to do. But somehow, temporary turned into 3 days, then a week. I learned their names through patience, not translation devices. The oldest boy was called Sael. The middle child, a quiet girl who watched everything closely, was Varel. And the little one, the one who had trusted me first, was Nim. They picked up simple English words faster than I expected. Sael learned water and cold within 2 days. Virel learned book, after finding an old paperback on my shelf and refusing to put it down. Nim mostly just learned my name, which she pronounced with a laugh every single time. I taught them how to feed my chickens, how to stack firewood, and how to whistle, which turned into their favorite game. In return, they taught me small things about themselves, not through words, but through actions. Sael always stood slightly in front of his sisters when a stranger's vehicle passed on the distant road. Virel drew strange symbols in the dirt with a stick, careful and precise, like she was writing something important. And Nim, despite being the youngest, sometimes gave orders to the other 2 in a tone that made them listen instantly. It was strange. These weren't just refugee children. There was something disciplined about them, something almost regal, hidden under all that fear and hunger. One night, while I was patching a hole in the barn roof, I noticed Sael watching the sky with a worried expression. I followed his gaze but saw nothing except stars. "Someone's looking for you," I said, more to myself than to him. He didn't understand my words, but he understood my tone again. He nodded slowly, and for the first time, I saw real fear in his eyes. Not fear of me, but fear of whatever might come next. The scavengers arrived on the 9th day. I heard their engines before I saw them. 2 rough, unmarked transport ships descending through the clouds, kicking up dust as they landed near the tree line. I had seen ships like this before, the kind used by people who didn't ask questions and didn't follow laws, bounty hunters maybe, or worse, people paid to make problems disappear quietly. I hid the children in the root cellar beneath my kitchen, told them to stay silent, and grabbed the only weapon I had, an old shotgun I used for scaring off wolves, never people. I stood on my porch as 3 armed men approached, their faces covered, their movements confident, like they had done this many times before. "We're looking for 3 young ones," the lead man said, his voice flat and businesslike. "Non-human. You seen them?" "Just me and my chickens out here," I said, keeping my voice calm even though my heart was pounding. He studied me for a long moment. "Funny, our scanners picked up a heat signature from a crashed pod near this property. Recent. Storm took down an old satellite dish last week," I said. "Probably what your scanner found." I don't know if he believed me, but before he could push further, a bright light suddenly filled the sky, so intense that all of us had to shield our eyes. When I looked up again, my breath caught in my throat. Ships, dozens of them, descending in perfect formation, sleek and silver, moving with a grace that human engineering could never match. And at the center of them all was a vessel so massive it blotted out the moon completely. The scavengers didn't wait to find out what was happening. They scrambled back to their ships and lifted off so fast that one of them nearly clipped a tree. I stood frozen on my porch, shotgun still in my hands, as the enormous ship descended into the field beside my house, crushing nothing, disturbing nothing, as if it weighed no more than a feather. The doors of the ship opened with a soft hiss, and light poured out like liquid gold. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a figure stepped out, tall and elegant, wrapped in a flowing garment that seemed to shimmer with its own inner light. Guards followed behind her, weapons ready but lowered, their postures showing absolute discipline. She had the same blue-gray skin as the children, the same silver markings, but hers seemed to glow faintly, like starlight beneath the surface of her skin. Her eyes swept across my farm, taking in every detail, until they landed on me. "Where are my children?" she asked. Her voice was calm, but there was something underneath it, something powerful enough to make the ground itself seem to hold still. Before I could answer, the cellar door burst open, and Sael, Virel, and Nim came running out, shouting words I finally understood without needing a translator. "Mother." The woman's composed expression shattered instantly. She dropped to her knees, arms open, as the 3 children crashed into her, all of them crying and laughing at the same time. She held them so tightly, so desperately, that I had to look away for a moment, feeling like I was intruding on something deeply private. When she finally looked up at me, her eyes were wet, but her voice was steady. "You fed them," she said. It wasn't a question. "They were hungry," I said simply. "Wouldn't you feed a hungry child?" She studied me for a long moment, as if trying to understand something that didn't make sense to her. "Do you know who I am?" I shook my head. "No, ma'am. Just know you're their mother, and that's enough for me." A guard beside her straightened immediately at my answer, whispering something urgent, but she raised a hand, silencing him instantly. She stood, still holding Nim on her hip, and studied me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "My name is Thessa Viril Korathis," she said. "I am the sovereign of the Union. 112 worlds answer to my rule. My enemies have hunted my children for months, hoping to use them against me. I sent them into hiding, into the stars, hoping they would find safety among strangers who wouldn't know their worth." She paused, glancing at her children, who were now happily showing Nim's favorite blanket, one I had given her on the first night, to the guards. "They found you," she continued. "A man with nothing to gain, who fed them, sheltered them, and stood on his porch with an old weapon to protect them from armed men, without knowing who they were or what reward he might receive." Wasn't about reward, I said. Just seemed like the right thing to do. Her lips curved into the smallest smile. That is precisely why it means so much. She offered me many things that night. Wealth beyond anything I could imagine, protection, even a place among her advisors if I wished it. I turned all of it down, not because I wasn't grateful, but because none of it felt right. I wasn't looking for a reward. I never had been. Just promise me something, I said instead. Anything. Make sure they always have enough to eat. Wherever they are, whatever happens, that's all I want. She looked at me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. You have my word, as sovereign of the Union. Before she left, each child hugged me tightly. Nim, still small enough to be lifted, pressed her forehead against mine in a gesture I didn't fully understand, but somehow felt deeply meaningful. Sael shook my hand like a grown man, solemn and proud. Varel handed me a small stone with the strange symbols she used to draw in the dirt, now carved neatly into its surface. For remembering, she said in careful, halting English. I watched their ship rise into the night sky, engines glowing soft blue before it shot upward and vanished among the stars, followed by the rest of the fleet. Within minutes, my farm was quiet again, as if nothing had happened at all. I stood there for a long time, holding the small stone Varel had given me, an empty stew pot still sitting on my porch railing from dinner. The wind picked up again, carrying the last traces of dust from where the ships had landed. I realized, standing there in the cold night air, that I never even learned the name of the language they spoke. I never got to ask what those symbols meant, and I never found out what would have happened if I had turned those children away that first night. But none of that mattered. Somewhere out among the stars, 3 children were safe, fed, and loved, not because of politics, or power, or fear, but because a stranger decided that hunger didn't care about species, and kindness didn't need a reason. That was enough for me.